the key messages we wanted to share with you from Burkina Faso, and this is how the study was undertaken at a national and local level in Burkina Faso. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you very much. So I understand that Mr. Soma is not with us today. Yes, indeed, I did mention that Mr. Soma is unfortunately not available with us here today. So no one will speak on behalf of the ministry. This is what I explained. The study is that I just presented is on behalf of the ministry. We have tried to summarize the project and present to you the local and national study. These were the general conditions, so a real overview of how this study was undertaken. We did not go into details. Thank you very much for your feedback and for your presentation. Of Ouagadougou and Burkina Faso, the national level. So we will now move to the last presentation, which is from Mexico and the city of Merida. We're delighted to have with us Mr. Ignacio Macin Perez, National Coordinator of Institutional Development, and Ms. Ana Ceballos, Director of Artistic Development and Cultural Management, Sede Culta from Yucatan. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good morning, greetings from all us of who are part of this task team in Mexico, as well from the head of the federal government's Ministry of Culture, Alejandra Frausto. As part of the coordination mechanisms for the application of the UNESCO Culture 2030 indicators, I will mention that in Mexico, as a part of the agreements reached at the Mondia Cult celebration in September 2022, hard work has been done on the thematic indicators for culture in the 2030 agenda. At the national level, advantage was taken of the interinstitutional coordination mechanisms that have existed for decades. The political constitution of the United Mexican States established that the Mexican state will have the national system of statistical and geographic information. And as part of the system, there will be especially technical committees with the participation of the different ministries and the national institutions. In addition, for several years, we have had the especially technical committee for the cultural information chaired by the National Institute of Statistics and Geography and the Ministry of Culture, and made of the representatives of the Ministry of Public Education, the Ministry of Tourism, and the National Autonomous University of Mexico and the National Polytechnic Institute, among other institutions. The committee proposes and develops various interinstitutional projects that promote advance in the detection and monitoring of statistics and cultural indicators with a long-range transversal vision. As an example, the collection and analysis of the information necessary for the construction of a significant number of the indicators for this project was carried out, which was managed and reviewed through the committee. This means that in the future, there will be periodic monitoring of its behavior and evolution of follow-up of the observations and recommendations derived from this report. In addition to the committee, among the one hand, INEGI is the Mexican institute whose functions include managing the system of national accounts and as a part of its responsibilities, providing a comprehensive description of the country's economic activity. Its structure is robust enough to generate information from different satellite accounts, including the Mexican culture satellite accounts, in which the economic value of the culture sector and its participation in the national economy are periodically present, considering international statistical recommendation and standards. The Ministry of Culture has also developed important tools such as the Cultural Information System and the National Cultural Information System, which are invaluable sources of information and show the work being done in the country in the field of culture. These tools were fundamental in the constructions of the thematic indicators for culture in the 2030 agenda. On the other hand, one of the main challenge was to find statistical information disaggregated by sex. We are now exploring the possibility of using administrative records to overcome this issue. Another important challenge was that it was not easy to obtain information for some indicators through interinstitutional channels due to the size of the structures of the some institution, as well as the dispersion of their information. As general recommendation and policy actions by dimension, it can be said that for dimension one area of opportunity lies in the role of cultural heritage for sustainable development integrated into future national plans and strategies. They must be accompanied by the creation of spaces for interinstitutional coordination. Dimension 2, the information derived from the gross value added employment and economic units provides a broader picture of the mobility of the cultural sector. However, it is suggested that the more tools be developed to search for specific elements to recognize and understand the economic cycles of the cultural sector. Dimension 3, in terms of knowledge and skills, it is suggests that the efforts be increased to incorporate heritage building groups in the design of and implementation of educational programs and the training of teachers, especially on the protection of natural and cultural spaces, intangible cultural heritage and places of memory. For dimension 4, the participation of minority groups in cultural life and process related to civil society organizations should be promoted. To conclude, I can say that among the most important findings and challenges are the construction of the thematic indicator for culture in the 2030 agenda in case of Mexico have made it possible to build a more concrete vision based on evidence showing the contribution of culture to sustainable development through institutions. The collaboration between the Ministry of Culture and the institution represented in the Specialized Technical Committee on Cultural Information, especially INEGI, have been fundamental for the collection and interpretation of data at the national level. This should be valued and strengthened to ensure continuity. On the other hand, one of the most important challenges has been to maintain high levels of participation with the greatest possible number of institutions or organizations that have information within the national team in the different phases of the project. I give the floor to Master Ana Ceballos, who is in charge of the local level. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ignacio. Hi, and good afternoon, good morning here in Mexico to all of you. It's a pleasure for me to greet you and have the opportunity to be here today with all of you and share the experience that working in collaboration with UNESCO and UNESCO Mexico team has represented for the development of the pilot project of UNESCO thematic indicators for culture in the 2030 agenda in Mérida, Yucatan. Thanks so much for the invitation in name to Mauricio Vila, Governor to Yucatan. It is an honor that the city of Mérida was chosen to start this work worldwide. Particularly, Science Yucatan has been developing a public agenda related to the promotion of creative and cultural economies from 2019 onwards, through various projects that have allowed us to identify and train cultural agents in the region. I would like to begin my intervention by thanking UNESCO Mexico for the invitation. I would like to greet our national ally, the Ministry of Culture of the Government of Mexico. My name is Ana Ceballos. I'm a lawyer, a cultural manager, and I currently work as official in the Ministry of Culture and the Arts in the government of the state of Yucatan. I want to share with all of you the action proposed by Yucatan and Mérida based on the diagnosis made since 2018. The free exercise of their cultural rights established by law in the 4th article of the political constitution of the Mexican state. However, it is exercised through a limited budget for the design and the construction of programs that promote the profitability of cultural and artistic production and services. It also promotes actions to reduce informality and disarticulation of the sector. And finally, they work to generate awareness and assimilation of concepts related to the creative economy and its impact on the dynamism of their communities. Given all this, Mérida is the first city in Mexico invited to the UNESCO Indicators for the Culture Pilot. It's a great honor for us, and it's due to its wide cultural and artistic offer, also to the development of its cultural infrastructure attached to tourism, and the involvement of all sectors of the society. Given this context, the Ministry of Culture and the Arts of Yucatan forms in 2018 the coordination of culture and the creative industries, contributing towards addition of sustainability of the artists and creative work in the region. In order to achieve that, in 2019, a team from the state government of Yucatan applied to UNESCO International Fund for Cultural Diversity, and it was 9 projects selected by the committee of the UNESCO Convention of the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions with the project Promotion of the Creative Economy in the state of Yucatan. We consider that is an example of transversal work because it involves the Ministry of Cultural and the Arts, SEDECULTA, in collaboration with the Yucatan Institute of Entrepreneurs, IEM, and the Metropolitan Technological University. The AFCD invests $78,272 to carry out a mapping in 21 municipalities, a certification for cultural agents, and an acceleration program for cultural and creative companies. This project participates in this project of UNESCO thematic indicators, put us in the spotlight at the national and international level. Due to this, we find ourselves making collaborations to continue fortifying the cultural sector. When UNESCO Mexico contacts us, we as a government because the coordination of the series of work table both between SEDECULTA and with other organizations in the process we detected understand these traits. ¿Puedes ayudarme, por favor, a las anteriores, Ignacio? Estoy en la traits detected, por favor. Thank you. First of all, having segmented information that's allowed us to make better decisions as the government. This pilot, we can help us to find them to able to disseminate the results and make them available to everyone. And also the opportunity to build transversal work with the various levels of government. Among the main challenges of the pilot with UNESCO, we detected the following. It is imperative to strengthen communications and link with the municipalities, especially in Mérida. Also, to raise awareness of the importance of sustainability through the strengthening of the cultural and creative industries. We believe it is vital to promote participation of vulnerability or minority groups in the cultural life of Mérida and improve the conditions for the maintenance, preservation, and security of the cultural and artistic infrastructure. The next, please. La siguiente, por favor. Gracias. Now, this pilot shows us a route for follow. It's important to consolidate the support programs for culture, arts, and cultural entrepreneurship. We believe in strengthening cultural policies in thematic access, such as decentralization, inclusion, equity, and preservation of cultural identity. Development of training and professionalization programs in culture. Undoubtedly, the collaboration with the pilot on the UNESCO thematic indicator for culture in the 2030 agenda has been vital for us as a government, and its results will be very useful for decision-making and design of a new cultural policies in the near future. La siguiente, por favor. Thank you very much for your attention. It has been a pleasure to share you the work we do. All of you invited to visit Mérida, Yucatan, with its wonderful, its cultural, natural, and touristic richness. For more information, I leave you my mail. Thank you, all of you, and greetings.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we have now seen, and I really have to thank you all for it, 10 case studies at the national level and at the local level. We should have finished our session 10 minutes ago, but due to the different technical and other issues, we are somewhat delayed. However, this is a really important opportunity, and I would not like not to have some discussion. So if you are in agreement, we would like to continue for another 15 or 20 minutes, at least, to open the floor for discussion, to hear from you, your thoughts on listening to all of these different experiences and what you take away from it. During after the first few presentations, Jose Pessoa from UIS had raised some questions about the actions next that will be taken regarding the missing data or data that was inadequate or difficult to collect. This is a question that remains open, but any other questions or comments you would like to raise? I think this is a very good moment for it. Please don't hesitate to raise your hand or to write your questions in the question box or in the chat. I see Naima Labil. Please go ahead. Naima, please go ahead.
Merci. Alors, moi, j'ai quelques remarques et questions qui s'adressent.
I had a few remarks and questions that could be geared towards any of the 10 case studies that were presented to us. The first question, in my opinion, would be that one of the major strengths of those 2030 indicators would be to help us defining an exhaustive or agreeing on an exhaustive definition of what culture consists in. And I think one of the major challenge when we are discussing about culture is to determine what can or cannot be included in this definition. And for the first time, we have now this huge work undertaken by UNESCO trying to collect as many data as possible on those 4 dimensions and 22 indicators defining or contributing to the definition of culture. So I would like to know, with respect to the different countries, how did it actually articulate itself with respect to the existing definitions or the perhaps parallel definitions? Were you able to make any progress on a shared view, a shared vision and a shared definition of culture? For example, was there any impact in terms of defining a framing law for culture and from a precise legal point of view, define or agree upon what does actually fit under that aegis basically and what should be excluded from it? Because that's one of the major difficulties we've run into in the field of culture. It's basically how far-reaching it is, and we've heard many speakers here saying that mostly their challenges had to do with coordination, how to coordinate their actions in order to collect data. So that was the first question, in my opinion. And the second one that anyway corresponded to a difficulty we ran into as a UNESCO expert accompanying the case of Morocco had to do with the qualitative question and the need to answer by yes or by no, because sometimes it was extremely little yes or sometimes a frank and fully fledged yes that we would get back basically on those surveys. So could we kind of qualify the replies to the definition of these experiences and try to perhaps for indicator 12 especially, that would make a difference, to introduce a little more nuance basically between the smaller yes and bigger yeses to the questions posed. And then last but not least, a question that was that emerged certainly in the case of Morocco, but perhaps in other countries too. What place or space should be given to craft? We had a huge discussion about how to integrate the whole craftsmanship in this definition. For example, in the previous Moroccan speaker's intervention, there was a need to diversify between 3 different scenarios in order to widen the definition of what we were talking about, so that craft wouldn't be cast aside, basically, with respect to the indicators used. My last question now has to do with the challenges or the difficulties posed by data collection. That was sufficiently discussed. Can we also talk about the difficulties of communicating about the data collection's possible hindrances or difficulties? I found that in certain situations communicating on the subject was very easy. In other cases it was a little more challenging. Let me give the example of it. Indicator number 14, with respect to which the scores were sometimes deceivingly high, whereas there was clearly a consensus agreeing on the existing crisis around the educational system. So how can we communicate on this very subject and on the fact that we don't always value the efficiency of education as the condition of its the conditions enabling it sometimes? So all
Naima, but I can certainly speak to one aspect, which is that the definition of culture is, as far as the methodology is concerned, follows really the the 6 culture conventions and 3 recommendations. So for those countries that are, and most of these countries have already ratified these conventions for the most part, and the 3 recommendations were adopted by all the countries, they are in some ways putting it forward or taking these forward. The question is just how much and in what ways. So that is the encompassing definition of culture that we have used. But on the other points and on these points, anyone who would like to comment? I believe, Mr. Darrell, you had a comment that you put in the chat box. Would you like to go ahead? And then I give the floor to Mr. Hosniel. Please go ahead, Mr. Darrell.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Jyoti, for the given time. I'll probably reiterate my question first or my comment in the chat, just to give some kind of a background on what I'm trying to share here. So from most of the presenters so far, it appears that issues that I've been aware of since my initial involvement with the 2005 convention in 2005 from the Indonesian 2006 KPR are still prevalent to this day, most notably data availability and format, like disaggregation and availability, whether it's available or not, whether it's in quantitative or qualitative form. And then also data collection methodology. Some countries have expressed their that the methodology currently in place is maybe a little bit still questionable. And of course, there's a lack of commitment from or coordination among stakeholders, which is common in Indonesia too. I've been involved with 2 KPRs, and the issue is always the same from those 2 KPRs. So after all these years, should we still focus solely on identification of data availability and trends across nations? Or can we start to also provide practical information on the use of indicators to solving particular issues based on the best practices of exemplary countries? Can we also make recommendations on how to best optimize the use of available data for the development of related policies and measures? So instead of just focusing on, based on what indicators we have already, what is available in a certain country and all this stuff, can we also start, maybe giving recommendation? Okay, you have this set of data available to you. Maybe if you from these available data, you could certain countries have developed certain policies and measures that benefit them in a certain way, by maximizing the availability of these data, and so they're not just, we're trying to maximize the potential that's already there, not only trying to to perfect the amount of data that is available now. For example, we could probably agree that implementing or refining data collection is an investment, and it's a real expensive investment particularly for Indonesia, because we're such a big country with so many people. If we start to collect data, even one question or refining a question that's already that maybe is not disaggregated, or not specific enough, not specific, not matching the data, the indicator that's already available in our indicators. Even changing that one question or adding a question is really, really expensive. We tried to talk about it when Indonesia was developing their Cultural Development Index. We were trying to compare it to CDIS, and we were saying, in CDIS there are these certain indicators that we thought were good. We tried to recommend them to the National Bureau of Statistics, and they said that if adding one question is so expensive, the training, and then how to develop the questionnaire itself, because there's only a limited amount of questions that can be that can be shared that we can ask in the census. So accordingly, since this is a big investment, there's a need to practically show return on investment on solving particular urgent issues for the constituents. So is it possible to suggest priority for key indicators to address particular issues. So, for instance, maybe a certain city has more, yeah, maybe for a certain city there's issues that are more important than other issues, and that maybe you should prioritize these indicators instead of trying to what do you call it, to complete the whole set of indicators. For addressing your issue, these indicators will best help you address those issues that you are urgently facing. That's probably an example that I want to share. Thank you, Jyoti.
Thank you very much, Daryl. Why don't we take a few comments and then we can come back and address some of them. Please go ahead, Mr. Hosmio.
Thank you, Dr. Jyoti. I just want to speak about the definition of culture raised by the lady from Morocco, I believe. Thanks for that question. I think it's a wonderful question because the framework is all about culture. And at the end of the day, we have to go back to the roots of why we are all here. In the case of the Philippines, and I'm talking about the general public discourse, usually when we think of culture, we think of folklore and performance, and usually our definition ends there. So the framework definitely provided us with I would say a macro level perspective about culture, that it is definitely a multidimensional practice and procedure. And so a procedure that is based on participation and equal access. It is also about management. We definitely had to gather a lot of data. And so it really dawned upon us how important it is for us to manage our information, to share information, to archive, those kinds of process, as well as to network, and how we relate with digital technology. We never really cared about, I wouldn't say care, I think that's a strong word, but when we talk about culture, our laws were not a part of the discussion. But when we implemented the framework, suddenly we were looking for laws that would support certain causes and certain activities in the culture field. Insofar as the implementation of the framework is concerned in the Philippines, we did recommend